What did you do to get revenge on your annoying neighbor? I'd always tried to be a good neighbor. I'm the kind of person who believes in helping people around me, keeping things civil. But Mr. Jameson, the man next door, seemed determined to test my patience at every turn. From loud music at odd hours to leaving his garbage bags spilling over into my yard, he seemed to go out of his way to make life difficult. Anytime I'd try to talk to him, he'd mutter something under his breath and shut the door. One afternoon, I came home to find my garden a mess. Mr. Jameson had decided to trim the trees on our boundary line, and branches, leaves and even some of my potted plants were destroyed. I was furious. But as much as I wanted to yell or retaliate, I decided to let it go. It's not worth it, I told myself. After all, he was an old man, living alone, and honestly, he probably didn't care about my frustration. Then, one night, something happened that changed everything. It was late, and I was preparing to head to bed when I heard a loud crash from outside. I peeked through my window and saw smoke rising from Mr. Jameson's house. Instinct took over. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, and raced over to his door. I could hear him shouting inside, his voice panicked. The fire was spreading quickly, thick smoke seeping through every crack. My heart pounded as I forced the door open. There he was, Mr. Jameson, struggling to stand, his leg pinned by a fallen shelf. The heat was suffocating, the smoke burning my eyes, but I ran to him, lifting the shelf off and grabbing his arm. He resisted at first, but I insisted, pulling him up and helping him out the door. Just as we stumbled outside, the firefighters arrived. Later, after the chaos had calmed and the fire was under control, I sat on the sidewalk, catching my breath. Mr. Jameson was sitting across from me, his eyes distant. I didn't expect a thank you. Frankly, I didn't expect anything from him. But then he surprised me. He looked up, his gaze softened. "You saved me," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. "After all the trouble I caused you. You still saved me." I shrugged, unsure how to respond. "You're my neighbor," I managed. "That's what we do." The days that followed were a strange shift. Mr. Jameson didn't just keep to himself anymore. He came over, hesitantly at first, offering to help with chores or asking if I needed anything. And one day, as I was working in the garden, he appeared with a small tree sapling. "Thought it might help replace what I ruined," he mumbled, setting it down beside me. His face softened with an emotion I hadn't seen before, maybe regret, maybe gratitude. From then on, Mr. Jameson became the kind of neighbor I'd always hoped he'd be. Every morning, he'd greet me with a small nod. One evening, he even invited me over for dinner. A quiet meal, but one that spoke volumes. It wasn't the life-changing apology I'd imagined, but it was something better, a genuine gesture of change, and the start of a friendship I'd never expected.